electorate cartography, architectures of the PreterPark, and the image of wide scope. Domain Y. Family, The Uncanny Automaton, 1963. The primal scene, abduction, and the dromological event. The user identifies the family domain with a 1963 abduction. In the context of the pop cycle, abduction rarely refers to extraterrestrial intervention, but rather to a structural displacement, a sudden removal from the familiar. Given the timeline, 1963, this likely correlates with a traumatic or disorienting family event, such as a divorce, a sudden move, or a custody transfer. This aligns with John Craig Freeman's My Story prototype, where the abduction is the divorce drive, a cross-country displacement that fundamentally alters the child's spatial reality. This event is dromological, in the sense proposed by Paul Virilio. Dromology is the logic of speed. The child is abducted by the speed of the automobile, the speed of the highway, and the speed of the family dissolution. The stable home is replaced by the vehicle. In this state of flux, the child grasps for a transitional object, an item that bridges the gap between the lost home and the new reality. For the user, this object is the Juarez Marionette. Material analysis, the Juarez Marionette. To generate an accurate visualization, we must understand the specific materiality of the Juarez Marionette, circa 1963. These were not the plastic, mass-produced toys of the American suburbs. They were distinct folk objects, often categorized as tourist art or curios, yet they possessed a disturbing vitality. Construction and mechanics. Research into vintage Mexican marionettes from this era reveals a specific construction profile. Heads, typically made of a clay composite, plaster/terracotta mix, hand-painted. This material is brittle. It cracks, chips, and ages over time, giving the puppet a mortality that plastic lacks. Limbs, wooden feet, and hands, often roughly hewn. The bodies were cloth-stuffed or segmented wood. The strings. Unlike simple toys with 1 or 2 strings, these were often 5-string or even more complex mechanisms attached to a wooden crossbar, airplane control. The strings controlled the head, arms, and legs, allowing for a jerky, uncanny range of motion. The archetypes. The standard set often included the mariachi, sometimes misidentified as a bandito, the señorita, the bullfighter, and the abuelo, old man. The uncanny, unheimlich. Freud defines the unheimlich as the discomfort arising from uncertainty whether an object is alive or inanimate, specifically citing waxwork figures, ingeniously constructed dolls, and automata. The Juarez marionette is the quintessential uncanny object. It is a little man, homunculus, that requires a master to move. For a child experiencing an abduction, a loss of agency, the marionette is a perfect mirror. The child is the marionette, moved by the invisible strings of the parents or the state. The mariachi figure adds another layer. In Mexican iconography, specifically Dia de los Muertos, the mariachi is frequently depicted as a calaca, skeleton. Even if the puppet had a fleshed face, the ghost of the skeleton exists beneath the clay. The old man puppet often featured a broken nose or damage, further emphasizing the fragility of the body. The atmosphere of the border, Juarez 1963. The setting of the acquisition, the Juarez market, provides the atmospheric backdrop for the prompt. The curio shop is a heterotopia, Foucault, a space of otherness. It is cluttered with leather goods, velvet paintings, switchblades, and puppets. The lighting is high contrast, the blinding white desert sun outside, and the cool, dusty gloom of the stall inside. The smell is leather and dust. This is the threshold where the abduction pauses and the effigy is purchased. Domain 2. Community. The Brand X Monument, 1966. The Cliff Palace Collapse and the Kiva. The community domain is anchored in a visit to Mesa Verde National Park in 1966. The user's narrative contains a specific, traumatic sequence: a collapse due to heat exhaustion at the Cliff Palace ruin, followed by being carried into a kiva, a sacred ceremonial chamber, usually off-limits, by a ranger. This event creates a spatial rhyme with the abduction. Family: abduction by car, horizontal displacement. Community: abduction by fainting/collapse, vertical displacement into the earth. The kiva is the kora, the receptacle. It is a subterranean womb/tomb. Waking up in the kiva is a rebirth, but a rebirth into the world of the dead. Ester the Mummy and the Brand X trope. Upon recovering, the user visits the park museum and encounters Esther. Historical context of Esther. Esther was a basket maker, mummy approximately 1,700 to 2,000 years old, discovered in 1938 in Falls Creek Canyon by archaeologist Earl Morris. She was not found at Mesa Verde proper, but was moved there for display. For decades, she was the museum's star attraction, displayed in a glass case. The act of naming her Esther, a random familiar name, was an act of domestication, stripping the remains of their indigenous power and turning them into a character for tourists. The Brand X. Punctum. The crucial detail is the postcard sold in the gift shop. It depicted Esther with the caption, "I used Brand X." To understand the violence of this image, we must analyze Brand X in 1960s advertising culture. Brand X was the universal signifier for the generic competitor. In TV commercials, Brand X was the detergent that didn't clean, the cigarette that tasted bad, the product that failed. By labeling the mummy Brand X, the museum/gift shop created a black humor joke. This woman died and desiccated because she used the inferior product. It transforms the ancestor into a commodity failure. She is the abject, that which is cast off. Repatriation. Esther was eventually removed from display, likely in the 1970s/80s, and repatriated, but in the PreterPark of the user's memory, she remains eternally in the glass case, labeled Brand X. Domain 3. Entertainment. The City of Night. The Myth. The soundtrack. Ella Woman and the lyric map. The entertainment domain is defined by the Doors' 1971 anthem, L.A. Woman. The lyrics function as the audio guide for this sector of the PreterPark. Key signifiers from the lyrics: City of Night. This is a direct intertextual reference to John Ricci's 1963 novel, City of Night. Hollywood bungalows, the architecture of transience. Mr. Mojo Risen, the anagram of Jim Morrison. Lost Angel, the Brand X version of an angel. Intertextuality, John Ricci's City of Night. The reference to John Ricci is critical. City of Night, 1963, is a seminal novel documenting the gay underground, male hustling, and the neon-lit subculture of Los Angeles, New York, and New Orleans. Ricci's world is one of masks. The hustlers and drag queens, Miss Destiny, wear masks of masculinity or femininity to survive. This links back to the Marionette, the wooden mask, and Esther, the dead mask. The City of Night is the anti-Disneyland. It is the shadow city where the lost angels live. The visual aesthetic of the novel is neon and shadow. It is the world of Pershing Square, the Cooper Do-Nut Stand, and the Dingy Room. Architecture, the dingbat versus the bungalow. The user query mentions Hollywood bungalows, but in the context of LA Woman and the 1960s aesthetic, this refers to a specific architectural typology, the dingbat or the bungalow court. The dingbat, 1950s/60s, the stucco box apartment building with tuck-under parking. They often featured exotic names, the Capri, the Tahitian, and starburst decorations on the facade. This is the architecture of the transient, cheap, flimsy, and all about the front, the face. It is an architectural marionette. The bungalow court, older, 1920s, romantic, Spanish style. For the PreterPark, the dingbat is the more accurate electrate signifier. It is a brand X home. It mimics luxury, but is actually a box. Domain 4, Career, the Semiotic Kitchen, 1975. The Discipline, Martha Rosler and the Anti-Julia Child. The career domain is defined by the primal scene of instruction in the user's professional field, likely art, theory, or media studies. The central text is Martha Rosler's seminal video performance art piece, Semiotics of the Kitchen, 1975. In this black-and-white video, Rosler stands in a sterile kitchen, wearing a black turtleneck and an apron. She presents an alphabet of kitchen utensils, apron, bowl, chopper, fork, grater, but instead of demonstrating their domestic use, she performs a lexicon of rage. She stabs the air, slams the tools, and transforms the instruments of love into weapons of resistance. Rosler explicitly stated, when the woman speaks, she names her own oppression. She acts as the anti-Julia child, dismantling the myth of the happy housewife, who is in essence a brand X woman, a generic commodity. The Z gesture, the mark of the agent. The climax of the video occurs at the letter Z. Rosler puts down the other tools, picks up a knife and fork, and slashes a Z in the air, the mark of Zorro. Significance? Zorro is an agent of justice who wears a mask. By adopting this gesture, Rosler reclaims agency. She is no longer the marionette of the kitchen. She is the Zorro of semiotics. She cuts the strings. The knife. The knife is the ultimate tool of the PreterPark. It cuts the marionette strings. Family. It dissects the mummy, community, and it pierces the screen of the spectacle. Entertainment. Synthesis. The image of wide scope. IOWS. Identifying the repeating signifier. The goal of the cartographer is to find the image of wide scope, IOWS, the single pattern that repeats across all 4 domains. Reviewing the data. 1. Family, the marionette, an artificial body controlled by strings. 2. Community, the mummy, a dead body preserved in a glass case labeled Brand X. 3. Entertainment, the dingbat, a building that is a false front or mask, and the hustler, a person wearing a mask in the city of night. 4. Career, the housewife, a role/mask performed in the kitchen. The IOWS is the effigy, the simulacrum. The user perceives the world as a collection of effigies, artificial or preserved husks that stand in for the real. The abduction turned the child into a puppet. The museum turned the ancestor into a prop. The city turned the home into a set. The career analyzes how these effigies are made. The mood of the PreterPark is Brand X realism. This is the feeling that reality itself is a generic copy. We are living in the Brand X world, the city of night, where we must use the knife of semiotics to cut our way out. Conclusion. This report has successfully mapped the shift from the literate biography to the electorate my story. By excavating the Brand X effigies of the user's pop cycle, from the Juarez puppet to the Mesa Verde mummy, we have constructed the architecture of the PreterPark. This virtual theme park is not a place of escape, but a place of consult, a machine for thinking. The prompts provided are the keys to unlocking this space, allowing the user to visualize and thus navigate the complex semiotic terrain of their own identity. The Z gesture of the career. Domain offers the final instruction. Do not just observe the park, cut the strings.